In November 1991, in Heilongjiang, China, the police discovered a secret bunker containing dismembered body parts and bloated corpses. Over the course of more than a year, 42 people, both men and women, mysteriously disappeared. No one suspected they had all fallen victim to a cold-blooded murderer. He not only detained and tortured his victims, but also consumed some parts of their bodies. So who exactly was this monster? What drove him to commit such inhumane acts? Don't take your eyes off the screen. This video will reveal the thrilling details and the most horrifying truths in Chinese history that you've never heard before. Please like and subscribe to our channel to explore this story with us right now. On November 15, 1991, at around 9:30 p.m., a long phone ring broke the silence in the duty office of the Nuohe Police Bureau. Hello, this is the Zhejiang Police Bureau. We need assistance investigating a major case. At least 20 people have been killed. This statement intensified the atmosphere. Realizing the case was of exceptional severity, the duty officer immediately reported to his superiors. An emergency meeting was held, and a swift plan was agreed upon. The Nuohe police promptly went to the address provided. It was an old house isolated on the outskirts of the city. A search warrant was executed immediately. When the bunker door was opened, the scene inside horrified everyone. Corpses lay scattered in various stages of decomposition. The cramped, damp bunker reeked of decay, causing even seasoned officers to vomit. In the deepest part of the bunker, they discovered skeletonized bodies, with only bones remaining after being devoured by insects. Investigators had to use respirators to continue their work. In fact, during their investigation of recent disappearances, the Zhejiang police had already found traces of the bunker when locals reported an overpowering stench emanating from it. The scene was a dilapidated abandoned house on the border of Nuohe and Zhejiang. Due to the case's gravity, they had to request assistance from the Nuohe police. News of the case quickly spread, becoming a hot topic in the media. Chinese media described it as one of the most gruesome crimes in nearly a century. What was the perpetrator's motive? How did he carry out a series of murders without being detected? Through meticulous investigation, the police discovered over 40 bodies in the bunker. A massacre of this scale was likely the work of an organized crime gang. Over the past year, a series of mysterious disappearances occurred in Nuohe and Zhejiang, primarily involving young, beautiful women with attractive appearances. When the discovery of the bodies was announced, many victims' families came forward to identify their loved ones. DNA analysis confirmed the bodies matched those reported missing earlier. This tragic truth deeply angered the public. They were outraged not only at the killer's cruelty but also at the police's delay in uncovering the case. Previously, when disappearances were reported, the police only told the victims' families they would notify them if any results emerged, but no information was ever released until their loved ones were found dead in the bunker. This caused widespread public discontent. To regain public trust, the authorities mobilized a special investigation team, comprising dozens of elite officers, to thoroughly search the area. Sweeping measures were implemented, leaving no stone unturned. All suspicious individuals were interrogated. However, after weeks of questioning, the police still could not identify any suspects. They also suspected that this might be the work of a professional criminal gang, which may have fled to other areas after being exposed. The delay and lack of leads in the investigation further fueled public dissatisfaction. Confidence in law enforcement was severely shaken, placing enormous pressure on investigators. Even so, months later, the case remained stagnant. When everything seemed at a standstill, an unexpected breakthrough emerged that completely changed the case's trajectory. During a late-night train station patrol in Hangzhou, security forces spotted some suspicious individuals. Specifically, seasoned patrol officers Lian and Xiao Wang noticed something unusual during their shift. A young woman around 20 years old, with short hair and an attractive face, dressed lightly, was talking to a man with an intellectual appearance. The man repeatedly scanned the woman's body from head to toe, occasionally glancing around nervously, as if afraid of being seen. This behavior caught Xiao Wang's attention. At the same time, Xiao Wang noticed 3 other men standing not far away, staring intently at the couple. 2 of them were dressed sloppily, with rugged appearances, possibly manual laborers. The third man was younger, with pale skin, a high nose bridge, and an attractive appearance, but his eyes were cold and fierce. Xiao Wang suspected this could be a criminal gang that used women as bait. They often exploited crowded train stations to conduct illegal transactions or scam passengers. Their method was sophisticated. The woman would approach the target, then scream and pretend to be harassed. Immediately, accomplices posing as her husband or relatives would appear, demanding compensation for dignity. Finding the situation suspicious, Xiao Wang secretly observed from a distance, ensuring he didn't reveal his presence. Meanwhile, he asked Lian to call for backup. Lian quickly ran to the duty office and summoned 3 more team members. The team brought batons, handcuffs, and carefully equipped a pistol for safety in case of emergencies. By this time, the woman had left the train station, leading the customer. The 3 men followed them quietly from a distance, heading toward a dark, deserted alley. Xiao Wang discreetly followed the group without exposing himself. It was like the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the alley, the woman suddenly stopped and turned to the customer. The 3 men immediately rushed forward, grabbing the victim and accusing him of harassing the wife of one of them. The customer looked confused, insisting that he had negotiated an intimate agreement with the woman. But the gang leader instantly denied it, loudly accusing him and demanding compensation for dignity. When the victim tried to explain, one of the 3 men suddenly struck him on the head. Another pulled out a dagger, threatening him and demanding he hand over all his belongings. Sheet 1 Xiao Wang and his team immediately surrounded the group, cutting off their escape routes. They ordered everyone to stop and drop their weapons. Sensing the unfavorable situation, the gang leader tried to justify their actions, claiming it was a personal misunderstanding and that they didn't want to trouble the police. However, the victim immediately countered, stating that the woman had agreed to the deal with him, and that the 3 men had deliberately staged the scene to extort money. Facing the tense situation, Xiao Wang raised his gun, warning the group to drop the knife and surrender. Realizing they couldn't resist, they reluctantly dropped the knife and were handcuffed. The police quickly received information about the case and arrived at the scene to escort the group to the station. During the interrogation, the 3 men claimed they were migrant workers from Harbin and that their actions were merely to teach the victim a lesson. They said the money taken from the victim was compensation for dignity and refused to provide any additional information. The police found the statements inconsistent, raising suspicions of an organized crime gang. Upon thorough inspection, they discovered that all 4 individuals' identification documents were forged. Notably, the woman appeared very frightened, her eyes constantly avoiding contact as if she was hiding a secret. Noticing her weakness, the police repeatedly questioned her. She seemed hesitant, wanting to say something but holding back. Pretending to need sanitary pads, the woman asked to step out with a police officer. Once outside the room, she whispered, "I'm being forced to kill people. Please help me." The woman identified herself as Shu Lihei. She admitted that she and the group members had participated in several murders. She revealed that the victims belonged to various groups and that some of the murders might be linked to the Nuohe massacre case. This information was immediately reported to the higher authorities. According to Su Lihei's information, the gang leader was the handsome man among the 3 detainees. His name was Jia Wenjie, a worker at an agricultural factory in Nuohe County, Heilongjiang Province. From this point, the picture of the case began to unravel. Jia Wenjie, born in 1960, grew up in a poor family. After losing his parents early, he was left without supervision and dropped out of middle school. From then on, he frequently appeared at train stations and entertainment venues, engaging in petty theft. As he grew older, realizing he couldn't survive on theft alone, he applied to work as a laborer in Nuohe. His good looks and eloquence helped him easily secure a job there. However, due to illicit relationships with female workers, he was soon fired. Afterward, Jia Wenjie began working as an animal butcher. Yet the difficult life and meager income failed to satisfy his greedy nature. Starting in July 1990, Jia Wenjie roamed the streets targeting young, gullible women. With his attractive appearance, he lured dozens of women to his home, then robbed and murdered them. Victims who resisted were treated with even more brutality. After killing them, instead of disposing of the bodies, he threw them into the storage pit in his house. He even slept beside the corpses day and night. Even more horrifying, Jia Wenjie often dissected the victims, removing their hearts, livers, and genitals, which he would fry or cook and then eat. From January to August 1991, Jia Wenjie formed a gang of butchers, specializing in luring victims to rob and murder them. He recruited Li Suhua, a farmer from Jiangdong town, and Sun Wen Li, a worker at a vegetable company. His gang became ruthless perpetrators of heinous crimes. To facilitate their crimes, Jia Wenjie and his accomplices rented a house in the local area in early 1991. This area became the scene of a series of mysterious disappearances. The missing victims were not only young women but also included men. Among the victims, one stood out, Su Lihei, a nanny who cared for children at a kindergarten for employees of the Nuohe agricultural factory. According to Su Lihei's testimony, she was neither Jia Wenjie's wife nor lover, but was forced to participate in his crimes. One night in October 1991, after being beaten and thrown out by her drunken husband, she wandered the streets, homeless and desperate. In despair, she went to the train station because it was crowded and well lit, making her feel safer. There, she encountered Jia Wenjie, who approached her. Jia Wenjie quickly persuaded Su Lihei to come to his house, claiming he only lived with his elderly parents. Trusting him, she followed him to a house not far from the station. Upon arrival, Su Lihei noticed the house had only 3 rooms and a large yard. There were no elderly parents as Jia Wenjie had claimed. Instead, there was a woman, Li Suhua, and a little girl. Li Suhua looked at Su Lihei with disdain, making her feel uneasy. She made an excuse to leave, but was grabbed by Jia Wenjie, who choked her almost to death. In her fear, Su Lihei was forced to undress and was subsequently assaulted by Jia Wenjie. Li Suhua witnessed everything but calmly carried the child to another room to sleep. When Su Lihei woke up, she cried and tried to leave, but Jia Wenjie grabbed her and knocked her unconscious. When she woke again, she found herself locked in a foul-smelling vegetable storage pit. In reality, it was not a vegetable storage pit, but a pile of corpses. Panicking, she tried to push the door and kicked hard but couldn't escape. In her desperation, Jia Wenjie appeared, holding a dagger. Terrified, Su Lihei knelt down, begged for her life, and promised to do anything to survive. Jia Wenjie made a condition. If she cooperated with him, he wouldn't kill her. He proposed that Su Lihei act as bait, luring men to his house so he and his accomplices could murder them. Initially, Su Lihei refused, but Jia Wenjie threatened to kill her and her family, including her parents and younger sister. Left with no choice, she was forced to comply and became part of the gang. Each night, Xu Lihei dressed provocatively and went to the train station to lure gullible men. She pretended to be innocent, enticing them with sweet promises to follow her home. When the men entered the house, Xu Lihei would excuse herself to change clothes and hide in the next room. That was when Giả Văn Cách and his two accomplices would suddenly burst in and brutally attack the victims. The victims were killed in various brutal ways, attacked with an axe or a dagger. Many tried to cry for help, but no one heard them, as the area was quite deserted at night. The crimes repeated over and over. After being murdered, the victims were thrown into the pit. The pit gradually filled with corpses, becoming a horrifying repository of Giả Văn Cách and his accomplices' crimes. It wasn't until the pit was reported by locals and discovered by the police that the group left the location. More precisely, on November 15th, when Zhejiang police visited the pit based on tips from locals, Giả Văn Cách, returning home, accidentally saw them and alerted his accomplices to escape. However, such luck didn't strike twice. On their first crime after relocating, they were discovered by Xiao Wang. After several days of intense interrogation, in January 1992, Giả Văn Cách and his accomplices finally confessed to all their brutal murders. According to the indictment, from March 1989 to October 1991, Giả Văn Cách and his accomplices killed 42 people, including 18 men and 24 women. Astonishingly, upon his arrest, Giả Văn Cách remained completely calm. He even couldn't recall the exact number of people he had killed, though the confirmed number was 42. Many believe the real number of victims could be much higher, as some families didn't report the crimes, and many bodies were burned to ashes or buried too deeply in the pit. The police also found evidence that some of the bodies were foreign nationals, adding further complexity and severity to the case. The official investigation concluded on December 26, 1991. The Heilongjiang Provincial Police Department decided to prosecute the case on December 31st of the same year. On January 9, 1992, a public trial was held. Giả Văn Cách and his 3 accomplices were sentenced to death, in accordance with the law. Throughout the trial, Giả Văn Cách cold and indifferent demeanor enraged many. He showed no remorse or fear of his sentence. The case of Giả Văn Cách came to a close, but the haunting memory of his crimes lingers in the hearts of the people of Heilongjiang and across China. It also serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers in society and a lesson about the responsibility of law enforcement to detect and prevent crimes early. If you found this story thought-provoking, share it to raise awareness of potential dangers in society. This video concludes here. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you found it captivating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more exciting stories. In China, the Phantom of Shaanxi, the cold-blooded killer, Zhimin, tortured and murdered 48 people over 3 consecutive years. The victims all shared the same vulnerability. They were disabled or migrant workers, easily lured by promises of jobs and free accommodation. Not stopping at murder, Zhimin also committed gruesome acts, forcing his wife Yan Shuhua to participate in his twisted crimes. Together, they desecrated the bodies, sometimes even sleeping alongside the corpses in grotesque displays of depravity. For 3 years, the police were unable to track the killer, as he used abandoned houses and hidden corners near railway stations to execute his flawless plans, leaving no witnesses. What turned an ordinary man into such a monster? Would justice ever be served? Don't take your eyes off the screen. This video will reveal one of the most horrifying stories in China's history. Like and subscribe to explore this chilling tale with us. On March 22, 1985, in Dimiao Village, Lilu Township, Shang County, Shanxi Province, Du Changmian rushed to a paper mill, frantically searching for his younger brother, Du Changqing, who had been missing for 3 days. A few days earlier, the 2 brothers went to the market together. On the way, Du Changqing suddenly said he had something to do and left first. Du Changnian didn't think much of it and returned home alone. That evening, Du Changqing's wife came to Du Changnian, visibly worried as her husband had not returned home. Du Changnian reassured her, suggesting that his brother might have stayed at a friend's house, and told her not to worry. But after 3 days with no sign of Du Changqing, Du Changnian decided to take matters into his own hands and search for him. He remembered that the last time they met, Du Changqing had mentioned carrying 1.85 yuan from the paper mill, saying he needed to exchange the money. At the paper mill, Du Changnian was told by employees that the person who exchanged the money was not Du Changqing, but a short, round-faced man. The information left him bewildered. After thorough inquiries around the area, Du Changnian discovered that the man was Zhimin, a villager from the same area. Realizing his brother's disappearance might be connected to Zhimin, Du Changnian immediately headed to Zhimin's house for answers. On his way, Du Changnian encountered another group of people, also heading to Zhimin's house. When they exchanged information, they found that all were searching for missing relatives, and all leads pointed to Zhimin. The other group was led by Jiang Yingshan, a farmer from Shangguan village nearby. Jiang Yingshan recounted that his cousin, Jiang Sanhe, had also been missing since January 1985. According to him, Jiang San had encountered Zhimin while returning from a work trip in Xi'an. Zhimin offered him a job repairing a pigsty, promising a generous wage of 50 yuan per day. Jiang Sanhe agreed to go with Zhimin, but from that day on, he vanished completely, never to be seen again. Jiang Yingshan's family searched everywhere but found no trace of Jiang Sanhe. Finally, they decided to confront Zhimin, the last person to see Jiang Sanhe before he disappeared. Both groups, led by Du Changnian and Jiang Yingshan, went to Zhimin's house with growing suspicions. Inside the small house, Zhimin was leisurely smoking a cigarette. Despite their barrage of questions, he remained calm, claiming that the paper mill receipt belonged to Du Changqing, who had asked him to exchange the money. He added that Jiang Sanhe had completed the pigsty repairs and left shortly afterward. Although Zhimin insisted he had no connection to the disappearances, the group remained skeptical. They noticed inconsistencies in his story and began pressing him harder. Under mounting pressure, Zhimin's statements became increasingly contradictory. He began stammering, reinforcing their belief that he was hiding something. Unable to wait any longer, the two groups decided to escort Zhimin to the police station for investigation, hoping to extract a confession. At the station, Zhimin continued to deny any involvement in the disappearances. With his small stature and frail appearance, he didn't fit the image of a killer, making it difficult for the police to accuse him outright. The police interrogated both sides but lacked direct evidence to charge Zhimin. Frustratingly, he was released soon after. However, to clarify the situation, the police decided to search Zhimin's house. By May 1985, 37 disappearance cases had been reported, but investigators had no leads. When the police arrived at Zhimin's house, they found the interior dark and suffocating. Windows were sealed with fabric and newspapers, blocking out all light. The floor was uneven and difficult to walk on. On the stairs leading to a loft, officers discovered dried bloodstains, dark red and unsettling. Inside, they met Zhimin's wife, Yan Shuhua, a woman disabled both physically and intellectually. She moved with great difficulty. When questioned about the missing individuals, Yan Shuhua remained silent, her empty gaze betraying no emotion. The house was filled with clutter, from straw to miscellaneous items, creating a cold and messy atmosphere. A foul stench permeated the air. Initially thought to be mold, the deeper the investigators went, the more they suspected it was the smell of decomposing bodies. Detecting something unusual, the two officers immediately reported the situation to their superiors. The criminal investigation team quickly intervened and conducted a thorough search of the house. Near the straw pile close to the radish cellar, they discovered the first body. The victim had been stripped naked, and their head was shaved. Digging deeper, they found another male body in a similar condition. The third body was found inside a woven sack, a deceased elderly woman who had been dead for a long time. Upon inspection, one of the male bodies was identified as Du Changqing, the younger brother of Du Changnian. However, the other body was not Zhang Sanhe. This discovery led investigators to realize that the number of victims could be far greater than initially anticipated. Fearing Zhimin might have accomplices, the police immediately deployed forces to seal off the entire Diamiao village, ensuring no one could leave the area. Zhimin and his wife were also detained immediately. Tension gripped the village. Police warned residents not to move around freely to prevent danger or the destruction of evidence. Expanding their search, investigators focused on an earthen cellar behind Zhimin's house. As the ground was excavated, a horrific stench erupted, forcing everyone to hold their breath. Beneath the layer of soil lay dozens of stacked corpses, most decomposed beyond recognition. The ghastly sight left even seasoned investigators shaken. But what was more terrifying, they found that the earthen cellar had another layer below. The case was quickly reported to the leadership of the Shaanxi Provincial Police Department. Additional forensic teams were dispatched to the scene to continue the excavation. By 11 a.m. on May 31, 1985, after days of searching and excavating, a total of 33 bodies had been unearthed from the cellar at Zhimin's house. But the work was far from over. In the pigsty on Zhimin's property, the excavation team discovered 8 more bodies neatly arranged underground, none of them intact. In the area near the restroom, police uncovered another 7 bodies. In total, 48 bodies, including 31 males and 17 females ranging from the elderly to children, were found. In addition to the bodies, police recovered 573 yuan in illicit funds and over 1,000 pieces of evidence, including clothing, murder weapons, and personal belongings of the victims. This chain of evidence fully exposed the horrific crimes of Zhimin. However, a significant question remained. How could a frail, small man like Zhimin commit such a series of heinous crimes? What was his motive? Zhimin was born on March 4, 1958, in Shang County, Shaanxi Province, into a poor family. As the eldest son and heir, he was excessively spoiled and became the center of his family's expectations. His small and frail physique exempted him from heavy labor, unlike other children. However, his life changed completely during his teenage years. His parents passed away one after another, leaving him in poverty and subject to the scorn of villagers who blamed him for bringing bad luck and causing his parents' deaths. The feeling of isolation and ostracism distorted Zhimin's psyche. He harbored deep resentment toward life and those around him, particularly the weak and vulnerable, whom he saw as representations of his own inadequacies. As an adult, Zhimin lured a mentally disabled woman to his home under the guise of intimacy. Her cries and pleas for help did not deter him. Instead, they fueled his monstrous instincts. He detained and abused the woman for days until villagers discovered his actions. However, due to the community's limited legal awareness at the time, rather than being prosecuted, Zhimin was forced to marry the woman as compensation, avoiding public disgrace. This community's leniency and outdated mindset enabled Zhimin to commit further crimes later. The disabled woman was none other than Yan Shuhua, who would later become his accomplice. Deep down, Zhimin harbored hatred for disabled people, viewing them as burdens to society. Being forced to live with Yan Shuhua, a disabled woman both intellectually and physically, only deepened his resentment. Initially, Zhimin endured the situation, but his simmering dissatisfaction gradually morphed into a distorted and dangerous mindset. After marriage, financial struggles drove him into deeper poverty. Neighbors shunned his family, while he resorted to petty theft to survive. Finding the stolen money insufficient, Zhimin escalated to ambushing and robbing travelers at night. One day, he encountered a mentally disabled man wandering the streets. The dark flame inside him ignited, and Zhimin pretended to offer the man a job, luring him home for the night. At night, when the victim was sound asleep, Zhimin struck his head with a hammer. Seeing the victim still breathing, he continued stabbing him with scissors until he was sure the victim was dead. Zhimin remembered hearing that a human body would decompose except for the hair. Fearing that the victim's hair might lead to his capture, he shaved the victim's head before disposing of the body in a pit. This act wasn't just about hiding evidence. Zhimin planned to collect and sell the hair for money. After his first murder, Zhimin became addicted to the thrill of taking lives. He felt powerful and satisfied every time he committed a crime, further fueling his monstrous instincts. Due to his small stature and frail body, Zhimin meticulously planned every crime to ensure success. He bought a large amount of anesthetics to incapacitate his victims before killing them. Initially, he targeted disabled individuals, whom he considered burdens to society. However, the number of such targets was insufficient to satisfy his thirst for murder, forcing him to expand his targets to migrant workers at railway stations and city gates in Shang County. Disguising himself as a labor recruiter, he lured victims with promises of high wages or free accommodation into his deadly traps. Between 1983 and 1985, 37 people were reported missing, but limited investigative technology at the time, coupled with the victims being primarily disabled or migrants, posed significant challenges for the police. Zhimin never left witnesses alive. He acted cautiously, leaving no traceable evidence. However, his greed and recklessness led him to make a fatal mistake by killing people he knew in the village, including Du Changqing and Jiang Sanhe. When captured, Zhimin and his wife, Yan Shuhua, faced undeniable evidence. Both admitted to their crimes, but their cold, chilling gazes showed no sign of remorse. Yan Shuhua, initially a victim, was gradually drawn into Zhimin's web of crimes. At first, she refused to participate in his heinous acts. However, his threats and control, combined with her isolation and psychological pressure, left her with no choice but to comply. When Zhimin began bringing victims home, he not only tortured them but also forced Yan Shuhua to desecrate their corpses. From reluctantly following his orders, she gradually became accustomed to and, horrifyingly, even found twisted satisfaction in these grotesque acts. In some cases, after Zhimin murdered his victims, Yan Shuhua would even sleep next to the corpses. This behavior not only demonstrated her dependence on Zhimin, but also reflected her severely distorted mindset, unable to distinguish between right and wrong. Yan Shuhua's weakness, disabilities, and isolation made her the perfect tool for Zhimin to control and use in his criminal schemes. He turned her from a victim into an accomplice, contributing to the series of gruesome acts they committed together. Each time Zhimin tricked disabled or migrant workers into his traps, Yan Shuhua remained silent, even helping him clean up the crime scenes and dispose of the bodies. During the trial, Zhimin brazenly declared that everything he did was to rid society of its burdens. He referred to the victims as societal burdens who deserved to be eliminated. However, his baseless justifications only fueled public outrage. Killing 48 people over 3 years, living among the corpses, and doing all this for a mere 573 yuan were actions that no normal person could comprehend. His crimes were both horrifying and unfathomable. At the time, Shaanxi province lacked a forensic psychiatric authority. To assess Zhimin's mental state, the investigative team invited numerous psychological and criminal behavior experts. Despite committing such horrific crimes, Zhimin showed no signs of mental illness. He answered questions quickly, clearly, and even demonstrated exceptional intelligence. The jury and the court did not take long to reach a verdict. Zhimin and Yan Shuhua were sentenced to death for the murder of at least 48 people, alongside numerous other charges such as robbery, abduction, and desecration of corpses. On the day of their execution, Zhimin and Yan Shuhua remained cold and emotionless, offering no apologies. Both were publicly executed, ending their reign of terror. The case of Zhimin and Yan Shuhua not only exposed the horrifying depths of human psychology, but also served as a wake-up call about the community and society's responsibility to protect the vulnerable. Justice was ultimately served, but the losses caused by this case can never be compensated. Innocent victims had to endure the brutality of a monster in human form. For society, this case is a reminder that poverty or misfortune is never a justification for crime, and that every life deserves respect and protection. Let us reflect on these tragedies as a warning to ourselves and our community. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to follow more gripping stories. Thank you for accompanying us. See you in the next video. See you in the next... The Silence of the Lambs, a movie about the cannibalistic Dr. Hannibal. You might think such horrifying goblins only exist in horror movies, but at the end of the last century, in Harbin, northeastern China, a real-life cannibal emerged. He hired workers from other provinces, luring them into his trap with attractive salaries, and then turned them into snacks. Even more horrifying, he extracted their brains, believing it would make him smarter and relieve his pain. The victims' bodies were dismembered, some parts roasted, others burned to hide the evidence. He even prided himself on his culinary skills. Who was this monstrous killer? What drove him to commit such atrocities? And how did he manage to hide his crimes for so long? Stay tuned, the most horrifying case in Chinese history is about to unfold. Hit like and subscribe to uncover the full story with us. On May 12, 1993 in Harbin, China, the local police station received an urgent call from a resident. The caller reported finding a suspicious black plastic bag at a landfill on the outskirts of the city. The foul stench emanating from it deterred anyone from opening the bag. At first, the situation didn't seem serious, but following standard procedures, the police took the report and arrived at the scene to investigate. However, upon opening the bag, everyone was stunned to find dismembered human body parts, 4 arms, 2 legs, and a pile of unidentifiable internal organs. A special task force was quickly formed, and the area was cordoned off to search for additional evidence. The similarity of the body parts suggested there was more than one victim. After hours of combing through the landfill, the police discovered more burnt human tissue. However, the torsos and heads of the victims were still missing. In the following days, the intense search continued. On the 3rd day, the police found an almost intact male body. This was the only significant clue among the 5 identified victims, which included 3 men and 2 women. All the victims had been decapitated, except for one, whose body bore numerous injuries. The corpses had decayed significantly due to the landfill's conditions and weather. The police concluded this was an unprecedented case of serial killing in the area. Forensic experts were summoned to assist in the investigation. After examining the bodies, they made a chilling discovery. The single intact head was missing its brain. Where had it gone? The first task for the police was to identify the victims. However, with 4 victims decapitated and the only head remaining severely mutilated, recognition was nearly impossible. The police were forced to issue a citywide missing persons notice in Harbin and sent reports to nearby police stations for assistance. After analysis, the investigation team proposed initial conclusions. First, the victims were likely from outside the province, as no local missing person reports matched the time frame. Second, While the victims' times of death were not simultaneous, they were relatively close, and the method of murder was consistent, indicating the work of a single killer. Third, the killer might be a local. The landfill in the outskirts was secluded, and only someone familiar with the area could dispose of bodies without arousing suspicion. Fourth, the precision in handling the body parts suggested the killer was highly skilled and psychologically stable. This raised the theory that he might have committed crimes before. Lastly, given such a twisted mindset, the investigation team believed the killer would not stop and was likely to strike again. After forming these hypotheses, the police set up checkpoints in key areas. They also interviewed residents near the landfill, but found no useful information. It seemed the killer had realized he was being hunted and chose to lay low. For several months, no new cases were reported. Just when all hope seemed lost, an elderly woman came to the police station to report her daughter, Xiao Mo, 30, missing for 4 days. According to the elderly woman, Xiao Mo worked as a prostitute to make a living despite her repeated warnings. However, Xiao Mo had not returned home for 3 days. The woman searched the streets where her daughter usually worked, questioning other women in the area. One young woman reported seeing Xiao Mo leave with a man heading toward the outskirts. With this information, the police linked the case to the recent series of dismemberment murders. They suspected the killer had struck again with a new victim. A special 5-member investigation team was formed to handle this missing person case. Determined to stop the murderer, they began tracking every lead. Investigators first approached the young woman who had spoken to the elderly mother. Seeing the police, she panicked, thinking they were there to arrest her, and fled. After catching up, the police clarified their purpose. The woman described the man who left with Xiao Mo as someone she had never met. He was about 40 years old, tall, well-dressed, and appeared wealthy. She distinctly remembered seeing Xiao Mo get into his car and head toward the outskirts. From this, the police sketched the suspect's portrait and distributed posters across the city to gather clues. 2 days later, the police received a report of a body found in a river near the town center. The police invited Xiao Mo's mother to identify the body. Upon seeing it, she burst into tears, confirming it was her daughter. This confused the police, as the method of killing in this case did not match the dismemberment murders. However, as it was still a serious crime, a thorough investigation was launched. Forensic doctors found multiple bruises on the body, particularly on the abdomen, suggesting the victim had been assaulted before being pushed into the river. Later that day, a local man came to the police station, reporting that the suspect from the posters was dining at his restaurant. Police immediately arrived and arrested the man on the spot. Upon arrest, the man appeared confused, claiming he didn't understand why he was being detained. When informed he was wanted for murder, he denied the allegations and gave a detailed account of his actions. The man admitted to meeting Xiao Mo that night and driving her to a deserted area on the outskirts to have fun. However, when Xiao Mo demanded a high price, he refused, forcing her out of the car. He then encountered another woman nearby and spent the rest of the night with her. The police located and questioned the second woman. Her testimony matched his account, proving that the man was not involved in Xiao Mo's death. After determining that this case was entirely different from the dismemberment murders, the police decided to separate the two cases into individual investigations. However, in the months that followed, no significant new leads emerged. On September 15, 1993, a frantic man rushed to the Harbin police station, reporting that his son had found a human arm on the street. The man explained that his youngest son had come home that evening, carrying a piece of meat, claiming it was dropped by the local barbecue shop owner. Upon closer inspection, the man realized it was a human arm and immediately reported it to the police, providing information about the barbecue shop and its owner, Hou Kai. Acting on the tip, the police raided Hou Kai's barbecue restaurant, surrounding the premises and requesting to search the area. Initially, Hou Kai denied everything, pretending not to understand the accusations. However, his demeanor changed when the police discovered a blood-stained knife in the wood storage area. Upon closer examination, they found remnants of human tissue on the knife. Realizing he could no longer hide, Hou Kai knelt and confessed to murdering his newlywed wife out of suspicion that she had betrayed him and infected him with a disease. He hoped this confession would earn him some leniency in his sentencing. News of Hou Kai's wife's murder quickly spread through the neighborhood, causing widespread fear and outrage. The police, however, were unaware that they had just apprehended the man behind a series of gruesome murders that had terrorized Harbin for months. The next day, a young man reported to the police that his brother and sister-in-law, who owned a local photo studio, had been missing for months. The man suspected Hou Kai's involvement, as he was a friend of his brother's. Although he had previously doubted Hou Kai, he lacked evidence. The recent development solidified his suspicions. Since Hou Kai had confessed without a thorough search the first time, investigators decided to re-examine the restaurant based on the new information. At this point, numerous hidden human remains, including bones and organs, were uncovered in the barbecue restaurant. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Hou Kai confessed to the horrifying truth. Since 1993, he had killed a total of 11 people, including friends, employees, and his newlywed wife. Hou Kai admitted his actions were driven by a fortune-teller's prophecy in 1992. At that time, he frequently suffered from chronic headaches and sought spiritual advice. The fortune-teller suggested that consuming human brains would cure his ailment. Initially skeptical, Hou Kai eventually believed this was his only solution after sleepless nights and unbearable pain. Determined to act, he devised a plan to open a barbecue restaurant as a perfect cover for his heinous activities. To run the restaurant, Hou Kai hired employees from other provinces, prioritizing intelligent individuals because he believed their brains would be more effective in treating his headaches. He offered high wages to attract workers and soon hired his first chef. On the chef's first day, Hou Kai requested a meal to assess his cooking. After eating, he invited the man for drinks, pretending to be friendly. Once the chef was drunk, Hou Kai retrieved an axe from the kitchen and attacked him until he was lifeless. He then dismembered the body and began consuming the victim's brain as a remedy for his headaches. Body parts were minced and cooked, while harder parts were incinerated in the coal stove. Difficult to dispose fragments were dumped at an isolated landfill at night. After successfully executing his first murder, Hou Kai felt exhilarated and believed he could continue his plans without detection. Within weeks, Hou Kai repeated his actions with 3 more victims, employing the same method, luring them with food and drinks, then ambushing them with an axe. However, during his 4th attempt, his victim, Li Mujie, accidentally uncovered his dark secret. One night, Li Mujie saw Hou Kai carrying a large black bag away from the restaurant toward the outskirts. Curious, he quietly followed him. At the landfill, Li Mujie discovered Hou Kai burning plastic bags. From a distance, he noticed a human arm protruding from the fire. Alarmed, he rushed over to confront him, startling Hou Kai. Realizing his secret had been exposed, Hou Kai grabbed a rock and attacked Li Mujie. After a struggle, Li Mujie was overpowered and killed. Unable to transport the body back to the restaurant, Hou Kai decided to dispose of it on site. He smashed the victim's skull, extracted the brain, and brought it back to his restaurant for processing. This was the nearly intact body among the 5 discovered at the beginning of the investigation. Li Mujie's case made Hou Kai more cautious. He paused his killings for a while to avoid police attention. However, His morbid cravings and persistent headaches drove him to seek out new victims just weeks later. This time, Hou Kai targeted women, specifically frequent customers at his restaurant. He noticed a woman who regularly visited, enjoyed barbecue, smoked, and drank alcohol. At that time, such women were often stigmatized as improper. Hou Kai secretly followed her, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night, as she left the restaurant, Hou Kai trailed her. Near an alley, he encountered a man named Li, the owner of a nearby photo studio. In his drunken state, Hou Kai yelled at Li, leading to an altercation. Ultimately, Hou Kai was beaten and humiliated, returning home bruised and enraged. Seeking revenge, Hou Kai devised a plan to get close to Li. He began buying and reselling film reels to Li's studio at low prices to establish a connection. Over time, the two became friends. Exploiting this trust, Hou Kai invited Li to his restaurant for drinks. Hou Kai repeated his usual method and murdered Li. Next, Hou Kai went to Li's studio to lure his wife to the restaurant, claiming her husband was too drunk to return home alone. Unsuspecting, she followed him. Upon entering, she was ambushed and killed with an axe. Hou Kai then disposed of both their bodies. The following morning, Hou Kai visited Li's daughter at her workplace, claiming her parents were arguing at the restaurant and needed her help to reconcile. Rushing to the restaurant, the daughter was attacked from behind as soon as she entered. The entire Li family fell victim to Hou Kai's murderous spree. Since the Li family were locals, Hou Kai dared not dispose of their bodies as before. He hid the dismembered parts in the restaurant and continued business as usual. To avoid suspicion, he placed a temporarily closed for travel sign at Li's studio, diverting attention from the family's disappearance. After the Li family murder, Hou Kai became increasingly addicted to killing. One summer night, he approached a street prostitute, but during price negotiations they argued, and in a fit of rage, he strangled her to death and dumped her body into the river. Following this incident, Hou Kai became more cautious, knowing the police were actively hunting the serial killer terrorizing Harbin. In mid-July 1993, Hou Kai's friend, Qilan, and his girlfriend visited the barbecue restaurant for a meal. After a few rounds of drinks, Qilan stepped out to take a call, leaving his girlfriend in the restaurant. Slightly intoxicated, Hou Kai made advances toward the woman. She resisted, kicking him in the groin. Unable to control his anger, Hou Kai retrieved an axe from the kitchen and attacked her from behind, killing her instantly. He dragged her body to a back room, cleaned up the blood, and acted as if nothing had happened. When Qilan returned, Hou Kai claimed the woman had left due to an urgent matter. Qilan, unsuspecting, continued drinking with him. Sensing Qilan's growing concern over his girlfriend's prolonged absence, Hou Kai decided to eliminate him too. Taking advantage of Qilan's drunken state, Hou Kai struck him with the axe, ending the life of his closest friend. A month later, Hou Kai met a young woman at Jiaolin Park. He approached her with politeness and invited her to dinner. Unaware of his sinister past, she began visiting his restaurant frequently. Over time, they grew closer, and when Hou Kai confessed his feelings, she accepted. They soon planned their wedding. After marriage, Hou Kai lived with his wife and mother at the barbecue restaurant. Initially, married life gave him some peace and eased his tension. However, a few months later, he suspected his wife had contracted a sexually transmitted disease and believed she had passed it on to him. Unable to accept this, Hou Kai flew into a rage. Despite her tearful denials, he murdered her with a kitchen knife at home. After calming down, he regretted not killing her at the restaurant, where disposing of her body would have been easier. Hou Kai transported her body to the restaurant, dismembered it, and packed the remains into sacks. While cycling to the outskirts to dump the sacks, one of her arms fell out and was picked up by a young boy. The boy's father, recognizing it as a human arm, immediately reported it to the police. Police quickly linked the sack to Hou Kai. They raided his restaurant, arresting him and uncovering further evidence tying him to the previous murders. On December 10, 1993, Hou Kai was brought to trial in Harbin, China, under the scrutiny of the public and media. The evidence, including Hou Kai's confessions and the remains found at his restaurant, left the jury with no doubt. He was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. When the death sentence was announced, Hou Kai showed no remorse. He simply bowed his head in silence, but his vacant eyes sent chills through the courtroom. The case closed, but the horrors it unveiled left a lasting scar on Harbin's citizens. Stories of Hou Kai became cautionary tales about the hidden dangers in ordinary life. The press and media dubbed it one of the most gruesome cases in Chinese history. Hou Kai, the man-eating monster, paid for his heinous crimes, leaving a stark lesson about vigilance and awareness in society. This concludes today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the next video.